Well, it's great. I was reminded that it was Diwali Day, although Christine and I attended, we went on a Zoom meeting with a friend of Christine's who's a Hindu, and she did a cooking. So she was teaching us to cook vegan food that they do for Diwali. So we had a fantastic 2 hours cooking this food, and then a fantastic 5 minutes eating it, really. But it was a really special thing, and we got a little bit about Diwali, the coming of the light. And so it seems that, and of course, being Eastern religions, it's not. It was yesterday, but it kind of on. So it sort of started on Saturday, and it goes on till about Wednesday. So I think we're still in a position to say Happy Diwali. And so when we light our chalice this morning, we're lighting that with that in mind, but maybe with a mind of those who follow the Eastern religions, for whom the notion of light in people is quite strong. Something I think that Unitarians would believe. So I light chalice in fellowship with Unitarians throughout the world, but also in fellowship with those who are celebrating Diwali at this time. The Hindus, Jains, Sikhs, and also some Buddhists. And I'll put this on the bookshelf behind me, where, well, it's hidden by my shoulder, but there we are. So a very warm welcome to our service, and as I said, I'm talking about generosity, but also selfishness and the difference, thinking a little bit about what it is to be human. Sorry, I seem to lose the video there. And it's lovely to be with you all. In a moment, we're going to sing our first hymn. Afterwards, I'm going to go round the room, and I'm simply going to ask everybody to speak. So you're going to have to unmute yourself and say, I am here because. So what we're asking is, why have you come to this service, if you like? So I am here because. So but before that, we'll sing our first hymn, number 84, Justice for Persons. I'll mute myself so you don't have to listen. If you've got the hymn book, it's the
Justice for persons and for different nations. Respect the diverse species in our camp. Community of life for sustaining. Love for this planet, which
So I'm now going to go, what I'm going to do, rather than get people to volunteer, because I always think there are these awkward silences, I'm simply going to go around my screen and invite, if you don't want to say anything, just sort of wave your hand away. But if you do, then just say, I am here because. So if I go from my top left-hand corner, we're going to start with Ben.
So I'm here because I'm a very spiritual person, and previously I've found it very difficult to find an outlet for my spirituality. And when I came to the Unitarians, I felt really at home here. So I'm here for my spiritual nourishment.
Thank you. Diana?
Very similar, and I would add to that a sense of belonging. I find a friendly community here, and I find that's hugely important for my well-being, a sense of acceptance in a community. For everyone else who wishes to speak, you will have to unmute yourself when it's your turn.
So I'm going to go now to Margaret Witham. Remember to unmute yourself, Margaret.
I'm here to share an hour's worship with like-minded people and company.
Thank you. Now, I'm afraid I know I can see the name Morris. Sitting next to Morris is a name I don't know.
Joan.
You're the next one on my list. What is it?
Joan.
Rose.
Joan.
Joan. Sorry, Joan. Why are you here?
Well, I'm a lifelong Unitarian, and Unitarianism is part of my life, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Morris.
Much the same, really. I'm here because I'm always here. It's part of what I regard as the way I live my life. Joining in with like-minded people on a Sunday morning is just natural.
Thank you. Dave V.
I'm here because I value it during these difficult times. I value the short period of fellowship with my friends and colleagues who share Unitarian principles, basically.
Thank you. Jean. Jean Reed.
I'm here because I enjoy the opportunity to be quiet, to open my mind and to hear about values and love and share the companionship of the Unitarians.
Thank you. Stephen?
I'm not going to be very original. I'm here because I often get from these services some insights that help me in my own life. And I also, particularly in these times where we're more isolated, enjoy the company of the others.
Thank you. Brian?
I am here because I feel as though I belong here.
Thank you. Louise?
I'm here for many reasons, but because for at least 1 hour a week, I don't have, even though I might physically be within the same four walls, at least in spirit, I'm with everybody else and part of our community.
Thank you. Hazel?
I'm here because I felt the need to be connected this morning. I've been thinking of our friends in Kolkata in India and realizing what a really difficult time they're having. And it's Diwali, so I needed to be here this morning.
Thank you. Christine?
So I'm here this morning because I enjoy the opportunity to think, and as the hymn proclaimed, to seek wisdom, which is insight and thoughtful and clear. And I like to do that with like-minded people, and I like to do it within a place and a space that doesn't tell me what to think, but encourages me to do it for myself.
And finally, Margaret Robbins.
Sorry for joining late. I'm here because it's lovely to join with other people, and seeing as we haven't got a service at Stockton today, and I do enjoy Paul Walker's services, I thought I'd join Newcastle for some company and some insight. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to congratulate you all. You all managed to do that without me having to use the phrase of 2020, which is, you're on mute. Actually, there's two phrases of 2020. I don't know, the other one is, it happened to me, I went to get petrol and I walked out with my mask on and I saw a fella coming in and he looked at me and went, oh, my mask, and I had to go back for it. They're the two phrases of 2020 for me. Lovely. I just love the diversity and to remember the notion of community is coming together through diversity. So we're all coming here with different motives, different purposes. I love Morris's, well, I'm here because I'm always here. To those who've got this deep kind of searching, Ben has been searching for some way to express spirituality, a lovely diversity, and that's what we are, a community of diverse people with different thoughts, and yet coming together to explore, and I think that's really important. So many years ago, actually, when I was a student, I read, maybe because I was pretentious, I don't know, but I read and got very moved by the book The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, and there was a story in there, just a parable really, that's always haunted me, and I've used it many times. And so I've invited Ben, if he would, I would think, well, I did someone, and Ben has volunteered, to read a parable that comes from The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Ben.
The Onion. Once upon a time there was a woman, and she was wicked as wicked could be, and she died. And not one good deed was left behind her. The devils took her and threw her into the lake of fire. And her guardian angel stood thinking, what good deeds of hers can I remember to tell God? Then he remembered and said to God, once she pulled up an onion and gave it to a beggar woman. And God answered, take now that same onion, hold it out to her in the lake, let her take hold of it and pull. And if you can pull her out of the lake, she can go to paradise. The angel ran to the woman and held out the onion to her. Here, woman, he said, take hold of it and I'll pull. And he began pulling carefully, and had almost pulled her all of the way out, when other sinners in the lake saw her being pulled out, and all began holding on to her, so as to be pulled out with her. But the woman was wicked as wicked could be, and she began to kick them with her feet. It's me who's getting pulled out, not you. It's my onion, not yours. No sooner did she say it than the onion broke, and the woman fell back into the lake and is burning there to this day. And the angel wept and went away.
Don't worry, I don't believe in hell, but I love that notion of, it's my onion, it belongs to me. And what I wanted us to think about today was to begin by thinking about the word humanity. It's a very interesting word that we use a lot. If we see somebody being wicked, we ask ourselves, where is your humanity? Like humanity is some kind of positive thing. And yet if I see a dog not behaving like a dog, I don't say, where is your caninity? Or a cat, where is your felinity? And then I went mad on this when, so I got to the horse, where is your equinity? And then, and I've got to do this aside because this just fascinated me. And if you know that what I'm about to say, then I'm sorry, but So I thought when I was talking about a cow, I would be saying, where is your bovinity? Bovine. But actually, bovines are also antelopes, goats, bison, are all bovines. The word for cow is vaccine or vaccine, as in vache in French. And when the first vaccine came out, it was the cowpox vaccine. And I can't remember what the Latin for pox was, but the word for cow was vaccine, and that gives us the word vaccine. So I wonder at the point whether Christine, who is a vegan and eschews beef and milk that comes out of the cow, does that make her an anti-vaxxer, I wonder? But I just found that right. So I give you that just as a little bit of interesting fact. The word vaccine actually comes from cow. And it takes me off my point, though. We don't use those words, but we exalt the word humanity as if to say that to be human is somehow to be good. And yet animals might kill to eat. They might occasionally kill their own kind for territory or to mate. But as far as I'm aware, no animal has ever burnt another animal to death for what that other animal believed, or crucified them, or hung, drawn, and quartered them, or built a wall to keep them out. And yet we still see the one animal that has done all these things privileged with the word humanity, that somehow humanity, despite all that humanity has done, is good, or we use the adjective humane. And it's interesting that I realized I quickly ran through this with Christine, who pointed out that a lot of my illustrations are from the United States today. And I think that's probably because news coming out of the United States has affected us. I'm not normally this America-centric, but some of the issues about the potential trade deal with the United States, and a spoiler alert, by the way, there won't be a trade deal with the United States, but one of the issues around that is that their farming methods are not humane. So we use this term humanity, and I was thinking, what do I mean if I'm aware of how cruel human beings can be when I use the word humanity? And I was stewing on this when I woke up on Friday morning, and as it were, Diana uplifted me, because her uplift that day was on the word kindness. And I think when we use the word humanity or humane, we mean being kind. That's fascinating, isn't it? Because actually there are many, many aspects of what it is to be human, but when we use the word humanity or humane, we seem to mean kind. So it is within our own thinking that a fully developed human being is a kind person. And kindness appears in all religions, what the Buddhists call the Buddha nature. Interestingly enough, verse 263 in the Quran says, and I like it, kindness is the mark of faith, and whoever is not kind has no faith. Rather interesting, because Muslims would normally say the simple fact of faith is to recite that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. And yet you could declare that as often as you want according to Surah 263, but if you're not kind, you have no faith. And of course, the golden rule, which exists in all religions, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It seems to be the mark of religion that it encourages human beings to be kind. So we have this weird juxtaposition. On the one hand, humans can be crueler than any animal, and yet we consider it to be the human nature to be kind. And on the other hand, we're all aware that however much we mask it, we can all be cruel. And that leads to two philosophical avenues that people seem to go down, the extreme avenues, from Plato, who believes that fundamentally all human beings are good, but they have lost that goodness and seeking to find it as they live in a kind of shadow world, to Calvin, who believes that all human beings are utterly depraved and only by the grace of God can we find goodness. But I guess most of us are stuck in that messy jelly in the middle, where we think there's good and we think there's bad, and it's all mixed up. It's mixed up in me and it's mixed up in you. But then the easy part comes when we create some monsters. The simplistic way to consider humans basically good but have been tainted by evil people like Hitler and Stalin and Pol Pot, or glorified by wonderful, saintly, sinless human beings, Jesus, the Buddha and Gandhi. I've always found the Christian assertion that Jesus was sinless rather odd when the New Testament itself actually describes a sin to Jesus, which he then admits he did. And I don't mean the knocking down of the tables, the temples. Jesus visits Tyre and Sidon, and he's visited by a Phoenician woman. The Phoenician woman was not Jewish. And she says to Jesus, could he heal her daughter? And Jesus says, I would not take the bread, the children's bread, and feed it to the dogs. That's racism. That is cruelty, describing another human being as a dog and not worthy of his care. And she says something and he realizes he's been wrong. That even Jesus is not perfect, which rather scuppers the notion of the perfect lamb who was slain for the sins of the world. The fact of the matter is, nobody in the world is perfect, with one exception. One person in the world is clearly absolutely perfect, and is also a stable genius, and that is Donald Trump. But with that one exception, there is nobody perfect. And I've always had a problem, by the way, with that idea that Jesus was perfect and somehow took people's sins away. It's a kind of weird idea that it was described rather wonderfully to me. It is this way. So we think of God as your father, and God is the perfect father, and he behaves as a wonderful father would. And what he does as your father is he says, you very wicked, you have been very bad, and you deserve to be punished. But do you know what? I'm not going to punish you, because I am the perfect father. I'm going to take your brother and I'm going to nail him to a tree. Now, I don't know about you. If I deserve to be punished, I want that punishment. I don't want anyone else to take it on my behalf. And so that whole idea seems to me to be quite monstrous, and it's something which people get away with without really thinking what they're saying. As well as, you know, the story of the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, seems to have God quite capable of forgiving his youngest son without punishing the elder. So we privilege our humanity, and in it we see something intrinsically good. In the story that we heard Ben speak from Dostoevsky, the angel in Loco of God, I think, will do anything to find that kindness in a human being, and weeps when it's missing. And so let's go of the onion. But the story challenges us. How much of our kindness and generosity is not powered, at least in part, by our desire to be seen as being kind rather than actually being kind? But then we become like angels debating theologians debating the number of angels on a pinhead. In the end, I do not judge others by their motivation, by what they think, but rather by what they do. There's something that I often use because I do a lot of team building at work, and there's a phrase I picked up from somewhere, and I do like this. What somebody else thinks of you has nothing to do with you. It took me a while to work that out. So I may be here, and some of you may be thinking, I really don't like it when Paul Walker is doing these talks. I wish it was somebody else. That's quite possible. And that has absolutely nothing to do with me. What's going on in your head is what's going on in your head, and that's your private business. What has got to do with me is how you behave to me, what you do for me, what you do to me, and what you do to those I care about and love. In these days of the Black Lives Matter movement, and the evidence I was reading yesterday is actually that at least in Britain it's getting worse. In these days of divisions, hideous divisions all over the world, we see it playing out in America. We've got what's happening in Britain, the mess in India, Pakistan is ugly ahead again. People are divided. And it seems to me that we are in desperate need of humanity in the sense of kindness. We can't define humanity, but we know when it's not there. Trolling on the internet. Lack of grace when we've lost. Demeaning people because of their age, race, colour, sexuality. The temptation is to fight. And sometimes it's right to fight. But I suspect, in reality, the best thing is to stand tall, to be brave, and to be kind. As we reflect on that, and if anyone has any thoughts, do please use the chat function or come back to me. Thank you. It always gets to me that love is something, if you give it away, end up having more. And I don't know why they don't sing it anymore. Well, they might do. And so we're now going to sing our next hymn, which is number 68, I Dream of a Church. And after that, if we can go straight to Louise to give the notices. Thanks, Louise. could just take a few moments to pause, thinking about the word humanity that I've been speaking about today, and think about where maybe the places where humanity has been lacking. I was listening with horror to the stories that came out post the death of Peter Sutcliffe about the way police were reporting that, you know, it wasn't a tragedy until innocent women were killed. And that was just used all the time. And I just thought it's worth pausing to think about people who are treated appallingly and somehow are judged to deserve it in some way. Thinking about maybe the women who work on the streets of all our towns. Think about the lack of humanity that is being shown in disputes over little bits of territory, like Nagorno-Karabakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Like still in Syria. Still the hostility between Muslims and the other religions in India and Pakistan, especially at this time of Diwali. And maybe spend a few moments thinking about the lack of humanity at times, our dismissing sometimes of people, our intolerance. And as we think all these things, let's say together, and maybe if you wish to unmute yourself at this point, if we all say together the Lord's Prayer. So I'll give you a moment to unmute yourselves. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Kingdom, power, and glory, ever and ever. Forever and ever. Amen. And so the service is coming to it. Let's just hope that if we've learnt anything or thought anything, we can put it into practice in our lives. And we end with, this is the moment.
This is the moment when we go our separate ways.
And so with that in mind, I wonder whether in ending the service, we all say something, whatever we want to say at the end. And I'm going to go backwards this time. So I'm going to go from the bottom right of my screen to the top left. So I'm going to begin with somebody having something to say, being Christine.
I'd just like to say that I'm thankful for the chance to just sit quietly and have food for thought. And I think, like quite often, I don't know quite what I'm going to take away yet. I think maybe by the end of the day or tomorrow or next week, things may have percolated and crystallized. But I certainly have had moments when I've realized that there's something I need to reflect on or something I need to do. And so I'm grateful for that. And it's also lovely to see everyone again.
Thank you. Margaret Robinson. Okay. Hazel. Hazel, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for that service, Paul. I really enjoyed seeing everyone today, and you've raised some really interesting things for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Louise?
Hi, everyone. I'm looking for it's a fascinating service. I'm looking forward to the social afterwards when we'll have a chance for more of a discussion. I find it interesting because being a Unitarian, I am naturally awkward. And it's always seemed to me that when we say to people, where's your humanity? It's not so much that we imply that humanity is inherently good. It's that humans have a capacity to choose to be good, which other animals do not have. So when we say that to people, we're saying that they could have chosen to act differently, but were deliberately cruel.
Thank you. Good thought. Stephen.
Yeah, so firstly, thank you very much. Secondly, I do share the first thought that Christine said, that, you know, these things can take a little while to, you know, percolate. The two things that really struck me at this stage in the service were, firstly, the story about the onion, which I wasn't familiar with at all, and you know, what you said about it afterwards, and also the story, you know, the story from the Gospel about the Phoenician woman, with which I was familiar, but I had never seen and never thought about the interpretation that you gave of it. And, you know, the bit about Jesus being, you know, a person without sin, which I'd also, you know, from my sort of Christian upbringing, had a lot of, you know, to with.